believe we're 90 degrees outside or more. It feels like it's India. Oof. All right. Well, we're going to get started. Hey, Carolyn, as you guys come on, thank you so much for muting and for putting your cameras on. Today's topic is going to take up a lot of time, but I feel like we could do this for longer. So I'm going to pull up my screen, and here's my 5 o'clock ding ding. And I'm assuming that everyone can see this okay? Well, I'd like to welcome everybody. My name is Vijay Joshi, and today's presentation is going to be pretty cool. I'm not a dancer myself, but when I work on this skill, it makes me feel like dancing. So welcome. As you're coming on, please mute your microphones and please turn off your cameras. I'm joined today with Barry Lynn Wood and Laura Fisher. They're my fellow puppy coordinators at Puppy Development at Leader Dogs for the Blind. And as I mentioned probably 5 times already, and you guys have done magnificently, but I'm going to mention it one more time for those of you who may not know. Please mute your microphones and turn off your cameras for the presentation. Both Barry Lynn and Laura, they're wonderful in managing so many things all at once. So they're going to be helping us out. If you have questions, put them in the chat box. If you have raise your hand function, raise your hand. But if we mute our microphones and turn the cameras off, the reception in the feed is so much better. So our talk today is about Leash. And this is something that, like I said, it makes me feel like dancing. I don't know why, but when I walk with my dogs, I'm not a dancer, but this fluidity, when you get it right, it really makes me feel like dancing. That's why I call this walk the walk. Now, there's a lot of information, so if you have any questions, please stop and put it in the chat box, and we will get to it. So, as always, I'd like to first share a couple of things of why and definitions. Now, loose leash walking, what's the purpose of it? Why do we want to teach our puppies how to loose leash walk? Well, the purpose is that we're raising guide dogs. And even though our dogs, if they do become guide dogs, are not in their harness, we would still like them to be on a loose leash when they're with their person. For this reason, it's really important that we lay these foundational skills for our puppies. They need to know self-control on a leash. And we ask all our puppy raisers.
I was already not going to really go to the whole tournament because I knew he had a.
So I think if you could please mute your microphones if you're coming on, that would be great.
I didn't want to miss practice on Friday, really.
Right.
And then of course we got the thing about Parker. And then.
Like, well, right, continuing on, for these reasons, we ask all our.
I told you I can take Johnny and stay at our house.
Can't hear you, VJ.
Hey, VJ, we lost your microphone.
VJ, we're having some problems hearing you.
I exited out of the PowerPoint. Did that make a difference? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Yeah, you did, VJ.
Okay.
I can hear you now, VJ.
Awesome. So what I'm going to do is start from the beginning since you didn't hear me, everyone, okay? We lost about only 5 minutes, so not too bad. And we're going to start again. And thank you for telling me you couldn't hear me. Can you guys see my screens okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Barry Lynn. You've got such a soothing voice. Okay, so let's try this again. And here I was getting into it too. I was talking about dancing and all these colors popping. Today's conversation is Loose Leash. My name is VJ Joshi. I'm one of the puppy coordinators at Leader Dogs for the Blind. And joined with me today is Barry Lynn Wood and Laura Fisher. They're my wonderful assistants. They'll be helping you out on technical difficulties. They'll be assisting me and guiding me through this. As you can see, we've given you a firsthand demonstration. And if you have any questions, please do include them in the chat box. We really, really appreciate them, and I'll make sure to leave plenty of time for those. So today's conversation about Loose Leash, I really get excited about it. And before we delve into it, I'd like to share why. I get excited about it because Loose Leash I always consider it a dance. When I'm with my dog and they're at my side, it feels like I'm dancing, and I'm not a very good dancer. I trip, I sprain my ankles. If it's any other kind of dance, I can do some damage. But Loose Leash has always made me feel like I'm fluid. So I'd like to share some of the things that will help maybe you feel fluid. Maybe you'll feel less of that tension and that tug of war that you have with your puppy. So first and foremost, what's the purpose? Why even teach Loose Leash? Well, critically and most importantly, we are raising these puppies to do guide work, not guide walk. Well, guide walk too, but guide work. And when they're not working as guide dogs, they are going to be by their person, their visually impaired or blind person. And loose leash skills and manners are very critical. For these reasons, we ask all of our puppy raisers to walk their puppy on their left-hand side on a loose leash using either a flat buckle collar or martingale collar. And we'll go over the collars and the other equipment a little bit later. Laura Fisher did a wonderful presentation on putting on the bandana and different equipment. So you can refer that one as well. We won't get into equipment that much in this presentation. So what's the objective? What are we trying to do with this whole thing of loose leash? Are we looking for a formal heel in the left? Are we looking for that your puppy is always right there? Or are we just looking for something that's fluid, that they're with you without playing this game of yanking and pulling and you pulling back and crouching low? What are we looking for? The objective is that you should be able to walk by your side with a loose leash with your puppy in one of the appropriate collars, the flat buckle or the martingale. There shouldn't be any tension or pressure on your dog's neck or on the gentle leader if you're using it. The puppy should be taught how to alleviate that pressure. So let's say there is a pull and a pressure, the puppy should be able to give into it. And we'll go into those exercises as well. And lastly, if the pressure is added, there should be some self-control in these loose leash walking exercises. So pretty cool. We gave our objective, we gave the purpose, and we're talking about puppy this and the equipment for the puppy that. But I find it's really funny that even I myself forget I'm at the other end of the leash. Besides the puppy, besides the dog, I'm the other one at the other end of the leash. So how are humans and how are they on the leash? I want you all to think about it for a second. And now that we don't have any technical, issues going on, take a second and think about it. what do you see when people have a leash in their hand? When there's a dog attached to the other end of the leash? Have you ever seen what people do with a leash? And if you have, if something comes to your mind, put it in the chat box. I'd like to see. But I want to share with you a couple of things. We're primates, and primates, even right now, without even thinking it, I'm using my hands with my conversation. But we tend to be very fluid in our hand motions, and sometimes we don't realize it. So we like to grab things, we like to pull them up into the air, we tend to hold sometimes the leash up and tight when we want our puppy to stop and be stationary without realizing it. A lot of these things that humans do, we don't really realize that we're doing it. It's just we're doing it. And sometimes when we're moving with a puppy, we increase or we shorten the leash. So we have a leash, and sometimes we'll make it short, and sometimes we're like lengthening it out. So we don't have a consistency in that length of the leash. So the consequence of this is that the puppy has no idea what location or position the loose leash is. So if your leash is shorter, is that the position the puppy's thinking you want me to be? But if it's longer, am I out here? Where exactly am I supposed to be? Another thing we humans tend to do is we want to hold the leash tight all of the time sometimes. All of the time. We walk while walking with a puppy from one place to another. And I've noticed this in a lot of my first-time raisers in the prison. They've got that leash wrapped around and they're holding it tight and they're walking from place to place. And our puppy, as a result of this, and I try to explain it, as a result of this, the puppy's like, you know, why even bother? It's going to be tight even if it's loose, even if I give in or if I don't give in, it's going to be tight. So there's no need to walk on a loose leash. The last thing, and this is for your own safety, we tend to hold a leash, and throughout the years, I've had many injuries because I myself have done this incorrectly. We'll sometimes wrap it around, and that's why I use this picture. This gentleman here, he's doing all the things that I wish none of us would do. He's got that leash wrapped around his hand. He's pulling with both hands. His thumbs are not at the very safe areas it's just not a good thing. And he's also on his knees. But we do unsafe things with the leash, such as wrapping it around our hands or holding it incorrectly. So now we've got on the human side. Okay, enough about complaining about humans. But here are some things that I want you to remember before we delve into some things that you can do to help you with your loose leash. First and foremost, loose leash walking is a skill that you're going to need continual work. I call it the abdominal exercises of training. You're going to have to work on this skill probably more than any other skill besides settling throughout your time with your puppy. You're going to have to reinforce it. You're going to have to revisit it throughout your time with a puppy. And it needs continual work. There are two ends of that leash. You need to work together with it. Start indoors. Make sure that you have the least amount of distractions. For any skill that you begin, with the most simplest to the most complex, you want to set your environment up successfully for your puppy and for yourself. You want to make sure that there's not that many distractions out there, because the more distractions there are, the more difficult it is to teach your learner, being the puppy. Make your sessions very short and purposeful. This comes back. I remember I had a history teacher who his hour seemed like it was 10 hours. Don't be that history teacher. Make your time with your puppy that you teach your puppy loose leash very short and purposeful. Make it fun. Learning is fun. Learning has to be presented in a way that your learner will remember it. Drilling is drilling. Fun is fun. So I'm not saying have a party puppy all the time, but what I am saying is that if you are having fun, if you are enjoying and having fun with your puppy on the leash, chances are your puppy's going to follow your lead. Have a reinforcer that's valuable. It has to be something that your puppy wants. Does that mean that you have to go get the highest value treat, the jerky, the cheese, the sausage? No. I usually train loose leash just before a meal. I take a couple minutes out before the meal, at the most 5 minutes. I take about 1/3 a cup or 1/4 a cup of kibble, because if I take the full meal, I'm greedy. If my puppy gives me something good, I'm notorious that I want more. So I either set a timer, and for me it's about 3 minutes, or I just measure out like 1/3 of a cup or maybe 30 pieces of kibble and train my puppy that way. The time you spend on working on the skill with your puppy, this is going to lay the foundation for loose leash walking. I can't stress that enough. You are going to lay the foundation for your puppy's life, for the rest of their lives. And not to put pressure on you, but you've got a lot of importance. You've got an important role playing besides everything else that you're doing for this puppy. This is a critical period. This ultimately will help that blind or visually impaired client have a dog with great leash manners, and it's worth it. Equipment. So I won't spend too much time on this. Before working on loose leash, you're going to want to introduce these equipment pieces to your puppy. So now you're saying, well, VJ, they're collars and they're leashes. And the minute we walk into Leader Dog, our puppy, we have a collar and we're already putting leashes on. That's correct. But when you go home, you can build on these acceptance of these equipment pieces with positive reinforcement and strengthening that foundation that your puppy's not shying away or pulling away. And we're going to go into that on the next slide. But before working on loose leash, make sure you introduce your puppy to the equipment that will be used. We use flat buckle collars, martingale collars, we use leather leashes. Other items that can be used but have to be approved by your puppy counselor are your gentle leader or your harness. And remember, if your puppy counselor approves it, then you're more than welcome to use it. But otherwise, please work with your puppy in the flat buckle collar and as they get older in their martingales. So enough about equipment. Now, how do you introduce a piece of equipment to your puppy? The collar, for example. And these steps can be used for the leash. It can be used for gentle leader. It can be used for harness. But I've given the example of a collar. You want to break this down. And if in these 5 steps you feel like your puppy needs a 6th step or a 7th step, include it. See what is for your puppy the best way to introduce this. But how I start out is by the first step 1, show the collar to the puppy, mark and reward. Then I bring the collar closer to the face and neck of the puppy, mark and reward. For the 3rd step, I put the collar around the puppy, but I don't close it, and I mark and I reward. For the 4th step, put the collar on, mark and reward. And then for the 5th step, take the collar off and mark and reward. And I think for the 3rd step, I said put the collar, without clipping. So in these 5 steps, I've broken it down the way I do, but I've had a couple of puppies that have been shy with a collar and they jerk because sometimes, you know, they got to go or they're just not interested. So I've spent time putting the collar on and marking and rewarding. And I know I can see a lot of people's thoughts going through their head saying, well, if they've got a park, I don't have time doing this. And you're very truly correct. But you can work on this when they've already been parked, when they're in more of a calm, quiet stage, when they're tired. You can work on this and you'll see the difference when you do take your puppy out and you do try to clip it on. So what are the first steps? So we've talked about the human end. We've talked about why it's so important. We've talked about the equipment. Well, let's get to the nitty-gritty details. How do you start out? Well, simply, you just start by taking the very first step. You start with your puppy on your left side. You move forward 1 step. If the leash is loose, it's going to be a tongue twister, I tell you. You mark and you reward, and you will reward on your left side. Our marker word again for our first time puppy raisers is the word yes. So you take your first step. If the leash is loose, I got it right that time, you mark yes and you treat at your left side by your knee. You take another step and you repeat. Mark, reward. Deliver the treat to your puppy at your left leg, but always wait for them to finish eating. Why is this important? You know, there's been discussions before, and then now they say, wait for the puppy to eat. Remember, they're learning a new skill. And if we're yanking, first of all, on their necks, they're not allowed to swallow it. We're not in a hurry. They don't need to get this right away. And they will remember the skill, but they need to be allowed to chew their food and swallow it. So they're not, one, choking, and two, it's a more pleasant experience for them that they'll remember. The last piece that I want you to take from this is once your puppy gets the game of one-step treat, you can deliver the treats variably. You can deliver it one-step treat, take two steps treat, take one-step treats, take three steps treat. The key here is that if your puppy lunges at the first step, you're not ready to take two steps. Stick to just one-step treat, one-step treat. And if your puppy's getting that first step and treat right, then increase your steps. Once you're increasing your steps, though, mix up the pattern a little bit. That's what we call the variable reward delivery. Initially, the goal is to get the puppy to walk on loose leash for 5 steps. But remember, if your puppy is only doing one-step treat, that's okay. You don't have to get to the first 5 steps right away. It's very important also to remember that mark and reward if the leash is loose. So let's say your puppy goes forward a little bit, but it's still loose. I would mark that and just treat at your left knee. So when I say a little bit, remember, we're looking for a loose leash. We're not looking for a perfect heel, a left heel. All right, so that's the beginning. So remember, quiet, least distracted environment. You're going to practice the one-step treat, one-step treat. But we can't just stay at that point. I'd like to give you some more games that you can incorporate. And I'm sure many of your puppy counselors, so if there's counselors out there, if you'd like to share some more games that you use with your puppy raisers, or even if our raisers would like to share some games. And notice I keep repeating games because I want to make this fun, not only for your puppy, but for you as well. I consider this a dance. I think this is one of the most fun things I do with my puppies. Sometimes, not so much when they get to certain periods of their growth. When they get to that adolescent period, I do think, why do I think I like this dance? But in general, I really find this a wonderful experience, but you got to lay the foundation for it. So the 3 games that I like to play, and there are as many more out there, so please include them in your chat. The first is Silky Leash. Silky Leash is a wonderful technique. It teaches your puppy how to yield to that leash pressure. The gentle pressure on the leash, it becomes like a cue or a signal for your puppy to move into that direction of the pressure. So that's why, and we're going to talk about each of these individually. The next game is Connect the Dots, which is very straightforward and simple. It's a game that you can take anywhere. You could do it at home. You don't really need any dots or anything in specific. You need yourself, your puppy, and your puppy's treats or dinner. It's a game that's played by giving the puppy high rates of reinforcement while working on the leash. The dots can be cones, they can be lines on the sidewalk or at parking spaces. I mean, the list is endless. So when you're in your environment, in my kitchen tile, I have different lines. I just would treat every 2 lines. So that's an example. When I go outside, sometimes there's different driveways. So I do 4 steps per driveway. Those are another example. And if you're lucky enough and you do have cones, you're more than welcome to do that. Now, the last game is what I do with my puppies. It's not in your manual. These first 2 games are. But when I explain it to you, I'm pretty sure a lot of you do some form of loose leash hustle. You just didn't realize it. So why dance? Well, walking loose leash is a partnership. It's a movement with a leash in between both of you. Remember, there are 2 ends to the leash. So why not? Why not dance instead of playing tug of war? So those are a couple of the games. I'd like to explain Silky Leash first. I remember when I was a puppy raiser and I first started way back when, one of these wonderful people in puppy development talked about Silky Leash. And I was just like thinking silk and leash, and I wonder if those leashes come in different colors, maybe a pink or purple. And I know I got a really good chuckle out of this wonderful person. But this is a technique that I want you to consider as your best friend. So you're going to start, do I sound like I'm repeating myself? In a small distraction-free area. Your puppy should be wearing his regular buckle collar with a leash attached. You can use a martingale, but I really found, and this is all in your puppy raiser manual, I really find that it's easier to feel with a flat buckle collar and the leash than it is with a martingale. But you can use it if you'd like. You're going to apply a light pressure that's like pulling a piece of thread. So if you can picture a silky leash or a silky piece of thread, and you're just gently pulling it on a horizontal plane that's right at level with your puppy's collar. So you're going to pull at the level of your puppy's collar, and it's just one gradual, gentle pull. The instant your puppy loosens that tension on the leash is when you mark yes and you treat the puppy. All right? So initially, you're going to mark for the slightest little yield of pressure. So it's going to be a skill that you're going to develop along with your puppy. So that's why that quiet place with the least amount of distractions is going to be really beneficial for you too, because you're going to sit there, your puppy's going to be by you, and you're going to hold on to that leash and gently apply pressure, whether it's moving away from the puppy to your right, maybe in front, but it's all on a horizontal feel. And the minute that puppy gives into that pressure, you're going to mark and reward. So you're going to move your hand only slightly when you change the direction. So if I'm moving my hand this way, I'm not going to jerk and go forward. It's going to be a gentle pull. After behavior is reliable, you can get the puppy to move with the leash pressure. So once you've done it sitting down, that's the best way to do it. And I usually use my office space because it's a very small room and there's a chair in it. I know people have recommended using a bathroom, but I just feel funny on the toilet. I don't know, it's just me. You know, if you'd like to use the restroom, that's a really great place. I've had great reviews on doing Silky Leash in the restroom. I use my office with a chair and it's a very small space. And once my puppy's gotten that, then I just stand in the office and I do it. Then I add movement to it. So remember, these are different pieces and we're building gradually, sitting, standing, moving. And I'm still in my office. I haven't even gone to another room in my house. So, and you're thinking, well, okay, well, how long do I do this? The progress occurs very quickly if you just do this a few minutes a day. I know for the puppies that I've brought home, I've done it maybe a couple times a day. And again, most of my training is done before a meal, so I can use the kibble. So for example, in the morning, I might take a couple pieces of kibble, work on Silky Leash. Then maybe later on in the day, I might take some more kibble and work on the connect the dots. But I spread it out throughout the day. It's hard work learning. We all know that. Now, connect the dots. I like this game because you don't have to mark for it, which is really nice. You just, every time you get to your marker, you give your puppy a treat. So the goal for this game is the handler is going to practice treat delivery at regular intervals. How many times our puppies are moving along so fluidly with us, so beautifully, and we're like, yeah, you know, I'm checking out, yeah, maybe I'll plant some, you know, yeah, no. And our puppies just moving right along. They're doing so fluidly, but we don't reward them. So for this is for us to practice treat delivery and to do it at regular intervals. So cones and other markers in the environment, they're used to remind the handler, being ourselves, to treat our puppy at our left knee. So every time we come to a cone, we just treat our puppy at the left knee, no marker needed. The markers that you do put, whether they're cones or whether they're dots or whether they're visual in the sidewalk, they should be about 2 to 3 steps apart in line, in a single line. And does that mean that only every 2 to 3 steps you can mark and you can only reward your puppy? No, if your puppy needs extra reinforcement, please give it to them in between your markers that are on the ground. Be mindful of clean delivery of reinforcement. Allow that puppy to finish eating before you go to your next marker. So for clean delivery of reinforcement, by this I mean that when you give that puppy the treat, give it right to your puppy's mouth at your left knee. And again, allow the puppy to finish before going on. No marker word is used. This is for the handler to focus on frequent rewards and proper treat delivery technique. With frequency of rewards to this puppy, you're going to have a more attentive and enthusiastic learner. I really like this game too. All right, so now the loose leash hustle. As I said, I think all of you are dancing a little bit with your puppies. You just don't realize it. And the fun part is that now maybe if you think about this as a dance, you may. I picked this picture because of the pure joy on this dog's face. I wish it showed the person's face as well, but this is just, to me, pure joy. So for the loose leash hustle, you're going to have loose leash walking in a synchronized movement of just 2 individuals, you and your puppy. Take 2 steps forward, you're going to mark and treat. Take 2 steps more, mark and treat. Take 2 steps to the right, mark and treat. Take 2 steps to the left, mark and treat. Take 2 steps forward, mark and treat. Now you can mix up the count and mark and retreat and repeat. Keep the rate of reinforcement, high delivering reinforcements at 1 to 5 steps. And make sure that you take time. Make the dance unique to you and your puppy. Maybe your puppy's a little bit of a fast mover. Maybe your puppy likes to space out. It's up to you. So try it. Try it and let us know what your thoughts are about it. I'd like to share with you some suggestions after all that information. I'm going to repeat a few things, but they're very important. Set up the training environment so your puppy can succeed. Start with reduced levels of distractions. Distractions are not our friends until our puppy's ready to go and ready to discover them, but they're not our friends. If puppy's excited or distracted, lower your criteria or expectations. So I want to stop on this a second. If your puppy is really excited, for example, you're going to class and your puppy does loose leash perfectly in the neighborhood. Oh my goodness, VJ, we can walk for 5 blocks in my neighborhood and my puppy's perfect. I believe you because mine is perfect too in my neighborhood. But when we come to puppy class, that's a whole new level of distraction. So we've got to lower our criteria. So if our puppy is loose leash walking in our neighborhoods for 5 to 10 steps, maybe our puppy needs to be reinforced more frequently, maybe every 2 steps instead of every 5 or 10. Maybe we need to do the little dance or the little hustle or little change in direction. Try not rushing your puppy. We can use transport. That's another great training session that we've incorporated in our virtual sessions. Please check it out. Always remember, give your puppy breaks when you're training on loose leash or for any other matter, any skill. They need the breaks. It's hard learning. It takes a lot of mental energy, and that's very tiring. I want you to end your sessions with your puppy that you're working on loose leash before they're tired. So if your puppy's tired at 5 minutes, I want you to end it at 3 or 4 and build up that endurance for your puppy. Again, I keep saying this, mark and reward frequently for loose leash. Good name recognition, that's something that we did not touch upon, but I wanted to make sure I incorporated. When you're working in a distracted environment and your puppy's about to pull, you can always use their name recognition and say, hey, Petunia, and reward right at your knee when Petunia looks at you. Petunia might be a couple steps ahead, but if she's not pulling, call her name before she does. When she looks at you, mark, reward, and treat at your left side. It's great for redirection as well. Now, I shared with you the loose leash hustle, but you can also try a zigzag route. We don't always have to go in a straight line unless it's dangerous. Then we do have to follow a straight line. But I think we tend to think we've got to go from point A to B in a very straight way. And we forget we can go left, we can go right, we can mix it up. So you can do a zigzag with your puppy. You can do L route. I've done the capital, M, the S, the T. You can even do a winding route. Change it up. Our puppies are very smart. And if they're predicting we're going in a straight line, and in that straight line, I see that there is my favorite person I'm going to pull because we're going to get there faster, try to mix it up. Change direction. Remember, this is a partnership. To wrap up, I'd like to share with you what we're having in our next sessions. On Thursday, July 9th, Laura's going to be presenting something very, very important. It's called treat placement, treats, and value. So I'm looking forward to that as well. I love to listen to my coordinators. It's really fun too. And then on July 14th at 5, we have Melissa Raymond. She's going to be discussing a topic that's extremely important. It's combating reactivity in our dogs. So thank you so much. Let me get back to our screen and I will stop sharing. So that, there we go. And if you'd like, hey, how you doing, Mike? If you'd like, please ask away. I'd love to hear your questions and comments. I'm finally now seeing the chat because I was so focused on dancing with the puppy slides there. Head hold. Okay, any questions, Laura, you think I should address first, or Barry Lynn? Or it seems like some of them. When my puppy is in the crate at home, I always take their collars off. I've had a puppy once got their tag caught in the wire in the crate. Is this all right to take their collar? Kim. Hi, Kim. I'm going to answer your question because that's the one that came. Then I'm going to get to Mike. Mike, I like your comment. Play music with this dance. Even more fun as it loosens up uptight trainers. You know what? You caught me. I do play music. But I'm going to answer Kim's question. Kim, that is the correct thing to do. You do take the collars off because more often than not, I've seen many dogs throughout my years get their collars somehow stuck on the crate, especially if it's a metal wire crate. So yes, please take your collars off when your puppy is in the crate, especially if they're being left alone. For that matter, even if I'm in the house, I take the collars off. And then let's see, can I take a 9-week-old puppy for a walk? If yes, how far? Hi, Yan, how are you doing? Thank you for joining today. So yes, you can take your little puppy for a walk, but just as you said in your question, 9-week-old puppy. So how long Depends on your puppy. I would start out with just a block. So are you going for a formal like loose leash walk, or are you just gonna go for a little sniffy walk? And whatever it is, you need to decide that before you go out that door. And once you've decided that I'm gonna go for a sniffy walk, you can do it even right around a couple blocks up and down. I usually let them sniff just around my yard because I don't have a fenced in yard. And start out slow. Start out with just going maybe a block and see how your puppy does, then add another block and increase it gradually. I have one 10-week puppy at home and one 14, no, now, oh my gosh, they grow fast. So sorry, I have a 12-week-old puppy at home and a 16-week puppy at home. And they have now built up their endurance. But when we first went, I think it's the heat too, it just took longer. It was just so much longer to just get them back in the house. They did not want to go further than a block. So take your time. Be mindful that they're taking a lot of energy to grow and they need their sleep. So you can do more short, frequent walks. Maureen. I'm trying to catch up. I apologize on the questions. Please address. Okay. So Barry Lynn or Laura, do you want to catch me up on whose questions you would like me to address first? Because I'm scrolling back and I see that there's a lot of questions here actually. Okay. All right, so I think the first.
Okay, the one that Maureen was speaking about, I think is this one. It's from Sandra, and it says, we do not have a fenced yard, so we have our puppy on a leash every time he goes outside. How do we make sure we have a loose leash at that time?
Oh, Sandra, that's a great question. And I don't have a back fenced in yard either. So this is, and I've got 5 dogs. So this is what I do. I take out 1 dog at a time. 2 of them are future leader dogs. The other 3, for safety purposes, I am not going to let them off leash either. So what I do is I first get to the same back door. I remember in potty training, Laura mentioned this. I go out the same back door. I have my collars and leashes there. They've learned to accept the collar with a leash on it. I put that on. And if they try to lunge before I even go out that door, we sit back down. Now you're saying, well, what if they have an accident? If they're that small, I pick them up and I take them out. Once they've learned that they can't pull me out the door because it's 5 against 1. So then they can go out walking by themselves, and now they're at the point. Once they walk by themselves, I don't expect them to be at my left side because they've got to go. What I do expect is they don't lunge and pull me with them. So how do I counter that? If they're pulling one way, I just change directions and I say, let's go. Okay, let's go. Remember, we're dancing. I am not going to be pulled because I've already hurt myself many a time. So when you don't have a fenced in yard, that comfort zone, you can't let go, because if they do get away, there's a lot of things that can happen to them. So I change directions frequently. And pretty soon they figure out that, hey, we're going to just go park. It's okay. And then I let them do their sniffy walk. I work on loose leash after they're parked. And then I see any other questions, Barry Lynn? And Sandra, I hope I answered that.
Well, I'm not positive if that's the one Maureen is asking about, because she mentions also a ground tether, and I did not see a question about a ground tether.
Okay, if Maureen, if you're still there, would you like to unmute and let me know what your question is so I can answer that?
Yes, I don't know if our Yorkie uses a ground tether. It's very heavy steel screwed into the ground, where she can go outside and lay down in the shade, or romp in the little pool we have for her. Do you recommend doing that with a puppy?
Okay, ground tethering is fine as long as it's attached to something that's sturdy and your puppy's not going to pull. And also, when you ground tether a puppy outside, they shouldn't be left unattended.
She's never left attended.
Yeah, so as long as you're, for example, I have a tether that's attached to a big oak tree. And there is no way my dog's going to get off of that. And that's for one of my own personal dogs. So she can be outside on this long line while I park all the other dogs. So but I never leave her outside on that tether by herself. So if you do tether your puppy, it's a great skill to have, but I'd like to make sure that you're doing it and your puppy's accepting it and not pulling and lunging towards you to get away from that tether. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so work with your puppy, and it seems like you're already doing it with your other little one, so good job.
Yeah, our tether for a 5-pound Yorkie is about 3 feet long, and it's screwed into cement. So I don't even think an Irish Wolfhound would be able to get away from that.
Oh man, I need one of those. Okay, very, very nice. Well, thank you for your
If I come across an Irish Wolfhound, I'll be sure and send it your way.
No, I meant the tether, not the. But thank you for, if I had property, that would be my dog. Thank you. How about any other questions, Laura or Barry Lynn?
We have a biting on the leash question.
Okay.
That when they're walking, he's very attracted to the leash and is biting on the leash.
Okay, so biting on the leash is something that I find that we tend to inadvertently reinforce. So we see them biting on this wonderful leash, leather leash or otherwise, and we either try to pull it out or we get down, we try to take it out, and then it's like creates a value to this. And the puppy's like, oh yeah, this is something that's really important, and they tend to bite it more. Whereas if we just said, puppy, 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 let's go, your puppy 9 times out of 10 will ignore it and not. But I found even if it's a little piece of felt and it's on the ground and I try to get it so they don't chew, like swallow and then throw, they're just. So try when they're pulling and biting on the leash, ignore it, maybe give them another cue, maybe tell them touch, mark it, reward it, give them another cue, sit, mark it, reward it, then start walking with them, because now you've taken that whole fun game out of the picture, and then they'll just spit that leash out and say, well, this isn't getting me anything. But if I sit, I get something. If I touch, I get something. If I stand, if I down, I get, if I walk with this wonderful person in this dance, I get something. Does that make sense? All right, so I see, I think Mary.
There's one from Mary, and I'm wondering that the same suggestions that you just gave, I think would be good for hers, as well as another about picking up leaves. But this one is when she goes out, she needs something to head off the sniffing. When she wants to walk on a loose leash and her puppy's got the nose on the ground, or picking up leaves, things like that. So I'm thinking the same techniques you just had, the puppy, 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 and getting their attention and rewarding for, I'll let you take over.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's okay, Barry Lynn. I'm so happy you're talking and just like getting it. I'm just excited. Now you got to do some session now. But yeah, so I can't stress this enough. Ignoring is a powerful tool. We all have it. It's just hard to do it, because that's another thing. Like, we like to be very expressive with, and just we just can't ignore. Sometimes it's just the most difficult thing for us to do. And I've done it too. I can give you trillions of examples, and especially when it's my own puppy, so much harder to ignore. And if most of you might know me, I sing, whether it's out loud or in my head. It could be Zippity Doo Dah. It could be Rainbow. I don't know. It could be any song, but I'll start singing in my head and looking somewhere else to ignore that puppy. And all jokes aside, it's a very powerful tool. Ignoring and redirection, they're very powerful. So try using them. And if that doesn't work, then it's just a management and to try to organize yourself better before going out with your puppy. I hope that helps. Now, when it's like sniffing on the ground, Mary, I understand totally, because my puppy that's supposed to go back, well, now my dog, he just sometimes when he first started in his adolescent, he would just face plant right on the stuff because he was like, okay, she's going to tell me to do this dance and I really want to smell. I really want to. So I get the sniffing part, but if you know that your puppy is going to be doing this sniffing and this face planting and this pulling towards these wonderful smells, have a game plan that I'm going to take two steps, mark and treat. I'm going to take one step and say, hey, Petunia, mark and treat. I'm going to take another 3 steps and say, sit, mark and treat. So have a game plan, and then you'll find that it'll reduce that face planting, sniffing, or that pulling and sniffing. And I hope that helps. Okay, what else you got, Barry Lynn? I see Laura's in the chat box. Thanks, Laura. Okay.
Oh, well, I think you addressed this one, but it was in regard to the ignoring. Do you just stand and wait? But you said, no, you're redirecting. You're doing other things to encourage them. You're not playing with the leash, but you're redirecting them to, you know, watch me, focus, sit, touch, things like that.
So waiting and ignoring, sometimes it's like moss is growing on your trees because your puppy's like, cool, dude, I'm gonna keep chewing this. So you kind of have to add in the factor of redirection. It's almost like, I don't know if you've ever played sports, but if you've ever played contact sports and you see, like I played soccer, you see that other team coming at you and you know that this one's going to go for the ball and that one's going to, you just know. So you're kind of constantly maneuvering. Okay, I got to go. Now I got to swirl the ball. I got to go. So this is kind of like that's why I call it a dance. Your partner's going to give you some moves that if you haven't practiced this ahead of time, you're going to be tripping, they're going to be pulling. So this waiting part, you have to have a finite moment that, okay, this waiting or this ignoring isn't working. What else can I do? Where else can I go? So that was a good question. Very important, that when to know when to wait, when to redirect. And these are things you'll find you'll get with practice. And with each dog, it's different. Right now, the Bernese puppy we have, slow as molasses. It's like Tobias, dude, you back there? Where'd you go, Tobias? And he's just, that's who he is, and that's okay. But then I got to figure out, how do I get Tobias to stay with me? And the people are thinking I'm abusing this puppy because he's all the way back there. So you have to redirect, refocus, and replan, restructure as you're constantly dancing with your puppy. All right, well, any other questions, Barry Lynn? Did we cover everybody's questions?
I think you look good. If someone does have a question, please go ahead and unmute and ask it or raise your hand a minute. But I think they got covered in the chat or with you. Mark has a question.
Oh, hey, Mark.
Hi, VJ. My question has to do with the loose leash walking and sniff walk. They both have different goals. One is to practice, obviously, walking next to you with their, they should probably have their jacket or bandana on when you're practicing loose leash. The sniff walk, you're on a longer leash and you're letting the dog do and sniff whatever he wants. Can you kind of go into a little more detail on what to be expected in both those situations?
Oh, sure, Mark, and thank you for bringing that up. Those are 2 different types of walking that we tend to like blend together sometimes. So the first one, we'll go with a fun one for our puppies, the sniff walk. The sniff walk, my criteria is no jacket. Because remember, with a jacket or the bandana on, that's a symbol of them working, and that's going to transfer into that harness coming on. So when you're taking them for a sniff walk, you do not need to put a vest or bandana or jacket on, nothing. But what you do need to remember is that there's no pulling, there's no lunging. It is a sniff walk. They are permitted to sniff and have a leisurely walk, but they can't drag you to the tulips. They can't take you to the other side because all of a sudden the pine cones had the neighbor's dog pee on it. That's not allowed. So pulling and lunging, no, but no jacket needed. And sniff walks, I found that if you take your dogs or your puppies for a 10 to 15 minute sniff walk, that'll tire them out a lot more than an hour of hard walking somewhere. They come home, my dogs, I have a big shepherd, and I take her for a sniff walk for 15 minutes, and it's like I took her on a marathon. So that's the sniff walk. When we're doing loose leash, I know I mentioned it in the presentation. When we're teaching loose leash to our puppies, we're not doing a formal heel that you see in competition. And I think I didn't include the cue heel is added in the loose leash intentionally, because I'd like you to go back to your puppy raiser manual and read that great explanation that was put in there. When we're doing loose leash, you want to work with your puppy in a bandana or a jacket, because again, now they know that, hey, I'm working and I am not going to be sniffing. I am not going to be going towards, even if it's a little bit further, and stopping to sniff. So there's a continuancy, and your puppies will get the pattern very quickly. When you're doing loose leash, you're going to be playing these games with your puppy. Now, do you have to have your jacket on every time you do loose leash? No, but every time you do a sniff walk, please don't put their jacket or bandana on, because they learn what they've practiced. So thank you, Mark, for mentioning that. That was a wonderful point. And I think sniffy walks are one of my friends, especially with the amount of dogs I have. It's a great way for them to enjoy, and for me not to have to plan an hour walk with each one of them. So that was a great question. Thank you. And I hope I answered it and covered everything, Mark. If not, if I missed something, you're free to unmute and add. Okay.
No, good job. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I see Sarah's got her hand up. Hey, Sarah, would you like to unmute and let me know?
I'm going to be Sarah for the moment.
Oh my goodness, how are you doing?
I'm excellent. Nice to actually see you as well.
Nice to see you too. Well, I can't see you, but it's nice to hear your voice.
Yeah, my name's Keith. I'm Sarah Harfield's other half. Just a quick question.
I remember you, Keith. I remember you, Keith. How can I help you and Sarah?
A quick question, just about when Magic gets overexcited and wants a bit more attention, he tends to sort of bite and nip a little bit. What should we do at that point? Should we calmly put him in his cage and leave him to calm down? I mean, it's hard to ignore a dog that's biting you.
Yes, of course. So biting is one of those behaviors that as puppies, it's normal to them. And we had a whole training session, virtual thing live with Laura Fisher, and she did a wonderful job. But I'm going to put it in a nutshell. If your puppy's biting for attention, do they need to park? Are they tired? Are they hungry? Or are they just playful? That you have to figure out first. What could be behind it? And as you're figuring it out, have something to redirect them with. If you can redirect by having a chew toy instead of they chew your ankle. I hate to use poor little Tobias as an example, but lately he's figured out ankles are very nice. Now, the puppy that I'm raising for leader dogs is a couple weeks ahead of him, and he's figured out I can bite this lady's shoe or ankle, I get nothing. If I sit, I get everything. So again, we're ignoring and redirecting. So should you put your puppy in the crate if they're biting excessively? I would get a frozen Kong. Maybe they just need a moment of peace. Sometimes I want to bite and I need a moment of peace at the end of the day. Today it's going to be carry out. So first see where is this biting happening. Try to keep a record of it. Is it every time your puppy has to park? Is it every time your puppy is tired? Or is there no pattern, no reason, your puppy's just playful? So try that first, Kevin, and see if you find out what it is, then redirect. And if all else fails, give your puppy a quiet moment in the crate. And then as long as you're not reinforcing that behavior and how do we reinforce? We can say no, 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 because for the puppy, that's not really a no. That's more like, well, my person's excited. We can reinforce by touching. Maybe they want to touch. We can reinforce by jumping up and down. Remember, puppies really like movement. So are we inadvertently reinforcing? Because I find I do inadvertently reinforce. So I sometimes rewind and say, what's making this dog so excited? What am I doing? Is there something that I'm doing? And sometimes it is because I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys have to go again. And for them, it's like, yeah, we get to go out. We're going to go park. We're not going to park. So what are we doing that could inadvertently be a reinforcer for the puppy? Did that help, Kevin?
Yeah, it's Keith, not Kevin.
Oh.
Don't worry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I remember Sarah, but not your name, Pete. I won't forget it now.
I look like a Kevin, so that's probably why you made that mistake. No, that's very helpful. It is just that moment when he actually bites. It's so hard to do the right thing at that point. But yeah, having something in your pocket to give him, like a toy, is obviously a helpful thing. Calming him down.
You know, Pete, you're doing great. I've got like toys all over, so I understand totally.
It's not Pete, it's Keith.
I'm
just
gonna say Sarah's other person now.
That's fine. I do that. I respond to that.
All right, Keith. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you for your help.
It's the accent, VJ. It's the accent, VJ. You're not understanding the accent.
No, it breaks up, so I'm not getting his name.
VJ, I will tell you this: they named their puppy very appropriately to name him Magic, and I think that at some point we're going to see some of their magic tricks happening. So I'm so excited about it.
I think Sarah and Keith are both magical. Keith,
yes.
You are magical.
You have no idea.
Oh, okay. And I see someone said, could you send the link about biting? That would be on our private YouTube channel.
You know what, VJ, the biting YouTube one is the one that did not get recorded. So I will re-record, guys. I will promise you guys this. I will have it re-recorded and have it up by Friday, okay?
So see, there's the mystery, Laura Fisher. It's solved. I've been telling everyone, just be patient. It'll be loaded. It'll be loaded.
No, it was the one that did not get recorded, and it's Laura finding time now to build that into her schedule to redo that one. So that is all on me, guys. I will get it done for you, I promise.
Well, everyone, it's a great video, so it's worth the wait. And we appreciate your patience on that. But it looks like we've wrapped up. Thank you, everyone, for joining. It was pleasurable, as always, to share time with you. If you have any questions that we didn't cover or we missed anything, please let us know. You can email us at Puppy Development, and we're all here to help you. You have 4 coordinators. You have your puppy counselors before us. They are our most powerful allies. They're your advocates. They're there to help you. Take care and be safe and cool and enjoy the sun. It's Michigan. It changes quickly.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. It was wonderful.